The content you're about to hear may be graphic in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
Oh, how I wonder what it's like to relax. See the sky down under. Hope my plans collapse. Oh, how I'm under the surface of my tears, falling down asunder the meaning of my years.
This is True Crime XS.
Occasionally we get into these periods of time where we're covering a lot of more legal stuff, and I consider that to be true crime, but some of it is more kind of newsish, and I've always called it true crime news. I'm not sure that today's story fits as being true crime news, but it is one of the most interesting things that's been going on, and it's taking place in Massachusetts. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's been going on, just say 2025 for the sake of this. Are you familiar with what's known as the Lavalley Protocol?
No.
Okay. So they've gone through a period of time up there where, how much do you know about public defender work in terms of who it typically is, et cetera?
What do you mean? Who do they represent, or who the public defenders are?
Who they are, what they do, who they represent. What do you know about the general state of public defender work?
I just know that they fulfill the rule that everybody has the right to an attorney when they're facing criminal charges. I don't know a whole lot about. I've never had a public defender for anything,
right?
And I don't even know that I've even met one or talked with one. I maybe I have, but so I don't know a whole lot.
Under the Sixth Amendment, and then predicated on a ruling known as Gideon,
which we covered it last year in our Home for the Holidays.
We did. We covered kind of the origin story there. Everyone is entitled to a defense. And the folks who end up in that work as a full-time job, because there's a couple ways that you get there. There is some pro bono and public institute legal wranglings that happen at law firms. They do pro bono work. They take some civil cases, some family cases. They're typically choosy about how they take those cases. And a lot of young lawyers get on lists at local jurisdictions to be before the court in, district cases. Some people do traffic court to start out, then move to district, and they move to superior court cases. A lot of people learn on the prosecution side. They'll start out as assistant district attorneys or legal assistants. Well, it's sort of become this microcosm of the world that's almost more liberal leaning. And that didn't used to be the case, but largely there have been underpinnings of that, sort of throughout the history of what's known as indigent defense services. Typically, the way that works is you sign a waiver about your assets and your income, and a judge takes a look at it, and they appoint the public defender. But the truth is, if you're accused of a serious crime, 9 times out of 10, you're probably eligible for a public defender because of how expensive it is to get legal services, particularly in this day and age, and the younger you are. Well, it's come to a head recently in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm pulling from 3 or 4 articles to put this together. Kimberly Bookman wrote one of them. There is another one written by David Benek and Todd Kazakowicz, and then Amani Clement joins them from one of them. WCVB and WHDH, which is 7 News, and I think 5 News up there are covering this. That's going. 5 is ABC. I don't know who 7 is. I can't remember if there's CBS or NBC. So all credit where credit's due. I'm pulling from those sources. There are some rulings on this you can go read. You have to dig for them. But the bottom line is there has been a sort of a work stoppage up there in the kind of face of a shortage of attorneys. And here's what this one from Kimberly Bookman says over on 7 News. It says, defendants released from jail amid public defender work stoppage. So again, this is WHDH.com. It says, a judge has decided to let Deshaun Lawrence out of jail after he says he spent over 2 weeks in custody because the court system could not find an attorney to represent him on a drug charge. Your Constitution says that you're entitled to an attorney, said Lawrence. If you can't afford one, one will be and can and will be provided for you. So that was a violation of my constitutional rights. It's all due to public defenders in Massachusetts refusing to take on new clients until they get paid more. This is preventing cases from moving forward and sends people like Brittany Dagrica to sit behind bars, waiting for her day in court. There are a lot of people sitting here that need a lawyer that have kids and stuff like me. I have a 7-month-old. People like me need to get home to our kids, said Brittany, who was released from jail. There's a recent ruling called the Lavalley Protocol, and it's now making sure anyone in custody without a lawyer for 7 days is to be set free. Those without a lawyer for 45 days could have their charges dismissed. According to Rebecca Jacobson, who is representative of Public Counsel Services up there, she said, I think it's terrible that we can't find lawyers. Everything we do is about finding counsel, effective assistance, representation, and a voice. A voice for people who have no voice, and right now these people have no voice, and it crushes us every day. All day Monday, a judge at Boston Municipal Court heard case after case of people in this situation. The Committee for Public Counsel Services had a private attorney in court to try to help some of them on their cases, but there were conflicts of interest. And when a case could not get picked up, the judge ruled to let the people go free. I'm pretty sure if I had legal counsel by my side that day, I would have been released and able to go back to work, and the judge would have cooperated more. This is from Deshaun Lawrence's quote. That's not exactly how it works, but it's how they're currently dealing with it.
Did you just quote that the judge would have cooperated more?
That's what Deshaun Lawrence said.
Okay, that was the person who was incarcerated, right?
Yeah, it was the person who was incarcerated. Yes.
Okay, you're right. That's not how that works, but
July
not quite.
July 10th, David Benick and Imani Clement for Massachusetts WCVB 5, they put up this on July the 10th. It says, several criminal defendants have been released so far as public defenders continue to decline cases in Massachusetts due to a pay dispute. Private attorneys who defend people who can't afford a lawyer are still not accepting cases. So the courts have started the release under the Lavalley Protocol. The protocol mandates any defendant held 7 days without representation to be released from custody. So just to clarify, what they're saying is you can't be held on bail or without bail, meaning indefinitely, if you don't have someone representing you.
Right, but who's going to enforce that?
A judge has to enforce that. It has to get before a judge, and everybody has to have a first appearance. So that is the place that they would start the clock, basically, because depending on the jurisdiction you're in, the court has different protocols to get you a first appearance. I work for a public defender's office. We do first appearances every time a first appearance comes up on the district calendar. So everybody comes through that process, and that's the point where you typically get appointed an attorney.
Right, and so are they saying, like, I know a lot of places they just have a public defender that just basically stands there and does everybody's first appearance, right?
Right, but they're not going to necessarily be the one who's appointed to be on your case.
That's what I was going to ask. That one doesn't count, right?
That does not count. Like that is like
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The public defender that I guess does that could be the one that says this person's been held for too long.
Yeah, so I think the idea with the Lavalley protocol is that everybody gets if you get your appointment at your first appearance, and in 7 days, like you do not have an attorney listed as representing you, they bring you back in for basically a second appearance.
Right, and they have to let you go.
Right, they have to let you go at this point in time. That doesn't mean your charges go away, but the second part of this is a defendant going 45 days without counsel, they would dismiss the case for the time being. I will say that's probably temporary. That is probably a situation that will eventually right itself.
I agree with this. I don't think people should just be sitting in jail, like, because you've just been arrested. This isn't anybody who's been like convicted, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is a place in our judicial system that runs amok sometimes, right?
It really does.
And, my initial thought before, I put on my critical thinking skills hat, I think to myself, well, just don't do something to get yourself arrested. Except that's not always how that works.
Correct.
Right? Sometimes completely law-abiding citizens find themselves sitting behind bars.
Yeah, even if you go by the unfair statistics that are out there, because they're barely collected, at least 10% of the population is arrested for things they just didn't do at all. And It can take multiple court dates to sort that out.
Right. And so in the meantime, if you can't afford an attorney and you're not appointed one, you just sit there, right?
Yeah.
And so I agree that they should be. I personally don't think anybody should spend any amount of time behind bars that they have not been sentenced to or whatever the right word would be. I don't think people should just be held willy-nilly, right?
Right. Most jurisdictions at this point have gone to very serious felonies, depending on the jurisdiction you're in. The classes or the numbers and letter scheme would be slightly different. But the most serious felonies are the ones that they hold you on. Typically homicide, and then it kind of scrolls down a list. I know.
Well, and I feel like jurisdiction to jurisdiction, your mileage is going to vary.
Correct. So I was curious. The reason I bring all this up is I was curious what kind of defendants were going free. They don't really mention it in the first story, but in the second story they do. It says one of the defendants, Joshua Sullivan, was initially charged with an armed robbery and stabbing a coworker. So that, in my mind, armed robbery is a pretty serious felony. Stabbing can be a serious felony, or it can be, in some places, believe it or not, you can be stabbed and it can be a misdemeanor. But
that is an act of violence.
It is an act of violence. And frequently, depending on the severity of the stabbing, it can get sort of a lot of the alphabet added to what's known as an assault with a deadly weapon. And it could be inflicting serious injury with the intent to kill. So all those letters go together. It looks like a big long word that's like audaskis or something like that.
Yeah.
Is how you pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting one. He was in custody on a $1,500 bond, this guy, Josh Sullivan. And then he was ordered released with an ankle monitor while the state works out what's happening there. But mainly because the court could not find an attorney willing to take on his case. And this is interesting. They quote Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden as saying, he says he has been bracing for someone like Sullivan to be released because of the defense lawyer's work stoppage. He said, we can't kid ourselves. Does it affect public safety? Could it have a bigger and larger impact on public safety? Yes, it could. That's according to Hayden. Another defendant was initially in custody after he was accused of strangling his pregnant wife. He was also released due to the work stoppage. And again, from Hayden, he says, prosecutors are opposing the releases like this wherever they can, but he agrees that in many cases, if a defendant can't afford an attorney and the state can't provide one, the judge does not have a choice but to let them go. Hayden also said he agrees that the defense attorneys deserve a raise, but acknowledged that state lawmakers are facing a budget crunch. Go ahead. I think I interrupted.
Well, no, yeah. I was just going to say, you can't force attorneys to work as public defenders. and underpay them. Like, you can't say, too bad, you got to do it. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And if you can, it only works if they all do it, right? Because, they just move on to the next person. And it seems like maybe it's come to a head here in Massachusetts because enough people have stopped representing it. To me, I think public safety should probably be prioritized. And part of that is you have to pay public defenders at least some compromising amount, right?
Yeah, I doubt they're asking for, like, based on my knowledge, which as far as the salaries and stuff go nationwide, I have a good idea of the average, but I couldn't tell you the specifics. I can tell you that, like, they're not in there making what people think of when they think of lawyer wages. And I think you and I've had conversations recently where, like, some places pay $25, $30, $40 an hour. Some places pay per case, and, like, you have to, like, fill out fee apps. And, like, so I openly see, like, what my colleagues make based on the fact that, like, public defenders are public employees. They're employees of the state or the court system, depending on where you are. And
right. And nobody has to do that. Right?
No, they do not. It's a choice that people make. And, like, the truth is, in some places, like, one of the things that they struggle with is offices are frequently short-staffed anyways. So then you're piling up on the people that are in there. And, I don't know how many people understand this concept, but in local court systems, wherever you are, like, whatever the name of your city is, or, like, people at home, you have a county and you have some kind of judicial district of one type or another. Weirdly, there are a lot of frequent flyers in the local jurisdiction. So because of that, and because of the fact that, like, people who are living unsheltered and people who are using different substances and buying and selling substances from each other, and people who are involved in domestic violence situations that also have substance issues and whatnot, you frequently end up with conflicts of interest where you can't represent a guy whose wife you just represented in a matter where he was the prosecution's witness.
Right, and that just causes even more problems when you don't have attorneys to begin with, right?
Right. And frequently, like, what I do is kind of unique. Like, there's not a lot of me in the United States. And I say that because, like, public defenders don't always have the work support staff that, like, a private firm attorney would. I know that, but I also know that, like, some attorneys that I know that are defense attorneys and very good criminal defense attorneys, like, they have, like, one person who does everything for them. So it's kind of a balancing act to make all of this work out. From what I could read about this, the state agency up in Massachusetts that represents public defenders, they had proposed a pay increase for the bulk of their lawyers, meaning the people who are physically making appearances in court, so not the support staff, to go from $65 an hour to $73 an hour. This is in Massachusetts. So $65 an hour, if my math is right, that's like around 125, 130 grand.
A year?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in my opinion, is not a lot for a lawyer to be making, particularly in the day and age of student loans having to be repaid.
Yeah, law school is really expensive.
Right. And so it would be about 145, 146 grand they're asking for. That's for district court attorneys who carry huge caseloads in these counties, by the way. They don't have, like, one or two defendants. They have a lot of defendants. They were also asking for an increase for superior court lawyers to get from $85 an hour to $105 an hour. Superior court is where all the serious crimes take place. That's where they go to be part of trial. That's a heavier number for me to carry. Like, they're asking for them to make around $210, $215 a year.
It's just a $20 an hour raise, right?
Right. Yeah, it is. People who handle murder cases, and typically, depending on where you are, that could be a capital defender or could just be a homicide defender. they're asking for them to bump their hourly rate from 120 to 150. And I will say this, they have more complex cases, but typically have fewer cases. And they do fill in a lot of other ways. So this is like a whole thing.
It's basic economics, right? Supply and demand.
Yep.
You have to find people willing to work for what you're willing to pay that get the same results that the society that you represent want, right? Which
Yeah.
would be, people who didn't do crimes not in jail and people who did do crimes in jail. And they're pushing back, and they're pushing back in an effective way because somebody's got to make a decision, right?
Yes.
Do we want to hold on to the dollars, put the dollars somewhere else, or do we want to save society? And to me, I mean, in some ways, it could be a endless, relentless struggle here, but that's how everything I've talked about our judiciary or our judicial system has its own economy.
Yeah.
Right. And this is part of that. And it seems to me like people, if they understand it all, probably want effective public defenders, and they're probably willing for the officials that are voting on this stuff to divert the funds accordingly.
Yeah.
It's in every, I realize people might say, well, I'm never going to need a public defender, but like the public defenders, the way that they work, they benefit everybody, right?
Yeah.
And you got to keep that in mind. I don't know about, I don't actually know what the cost of living in Massachusetts is compared to like where I'm at or whatever, but I also don't understand entirely, because it's not just $20 an hour for one person. It's like everybody that does that particular. So I don't know what kind of differentiation and cost that we're looking at here, but I do realize that they've got to come to some sort of an agreement, whether it's what they're actually asking for or some other amount, but something's going to have to give because they're having to release people. And I'm glad they're enforcing it. The worst thing is like when you have something in place that's not being enforced, it sounds like this has come up and they're bringing attention to the issue by highlighting these cases that have recently, because there is something to be said for violent offenders being let out because they don't have a public defender because nobody took the case and they qualify for one.
Well, I pulled cost of living averages across the United States just because I was curious. Hawaii is the most expensive place to live in the United States. The top 5 include California, District of Columbia, Alaska, and Hawaii. But the second most expensive place to live in the United States is Massachusetts.
Right. So I don't know that those asks sounded so unreasonable.
No, I don't think it's that unreasonable. And they even sound like negotiating numbers to me. Like they sound like they'll settle if, halfway if that doesn't work out.
Well, and that's the whole point, right? To get it moving.
Right. Yeah, and I live in a low cost of living index place. It's like way down the list, like probably around 30 or something. But like it's more expensive to live in Massachusetts than it is California, DC, Alaska, New York, Maryland, New Jersey, Vermont, Washington. You know what I'm saying? Like all those other states, everything except Hawaii is it's more expensive to live in Massachusetts. And Hawaii is not even close. Like it's like 200% of everything else.
Well, everything has to be shipped there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's exactly why it's so expensive. I did not know until I looked this up that it was that expensive to live in Massachusetts.
Well, I had a feeling it was anywhere that has the high property taxes, right?
Yeah.
That's usually a good indication of kind of where you're at. Well, I actually don't know, but like where it would fall on what you're looking at, like an index of highest to lowest or whatever. And property taxes are a good indication of sort of the fiscal responsibility of the people that are elected to run different things. And I know New England, for the most part, most of those places have a higher cost of living.
Well, I had pulled it up to just kind of look at the cost of living, and I had kind of poked around a little bit to see like what they were paying their politicians up there. It does appear they're paying them pretty well.
Well, in public defenders, I feel like they're almost. I don't know if it's politically correct to say this or not, but they're almost like the redheaded stepchild.
A little bit, yeah.
And so it's like they're necessary, but like they're sort of they. I personally think they should be getting paid at least as much as the prosecution team is getting paid.
Yes, that is probably a good point. I will say public defenders frequently have more cases than the prosecution counterpart to their cases. But yeah, they like there's a back and forth there where you could probably find some balance if you were to look at it that way. I thought it was interesting that they were at the point that they were having a work stoppage.
Right. And see, that I think is where it matters because you've actually got enough people participating and not taking these cases
Right.
To make a difference. Right. Because, if they've just got an endless list of people who will do it, if you get to their name, you can't, this will not be an effective strategy when you've got a constant no to the point where people are having to be released without paying their bail because they don't have an attorney. And, it is a violation of your Sixth Amendment right. If you say, I want an attorney, I can't afford one, and that is approved or however they do it, and then you don't have one, it's a violation of your constitutional rights.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a blatant one, right? And, there's different points of cases, right? But I would say the beginning, right after the arraignment or whatever preliminary, what did you say? First appearance.
First appearances, yeah.
Right after first appearance, I say that could be a very important part of a case, right? Like you should be being let out, which
Yes.
I think was some of the people that were interviewed for that story. I think that was sort of their point. They're kind of being held pointlessly, but some people, if they get locked up, even though they shouldn't be locked up, like their entire lives can fall apart.
Oh yeah, you can lose your that's something that I see on I'd say a monthly basis. You see people that lose their homes, their jobs, like there's all sorts of things that happen. And sometimes it's totally based on a decision a person made. Sometimes it's like not. And sometimes people did not do what they're accused of. And I know.
And sometimes they could be out, even though they've been accused of it, until trial, right?
Right. Most instances, I would say, like the bulk of instances, people should be out until trial. It's only like 5 or 10% of the cases that are like the worst of the worst where you have to hold those people, particularly like when it's repeat offenders or very serious crimes.
Well, when you were talking about frequent flyers and how that affects conflicts of interest with the public defender system or whatever,
Yeah.
I thought to myself, well, I think anytime you've got frequent flyers, so we're talking about low-level offenses where they're not getting a lot of punishment, because how can you be a frequent flyer without getting stuck in jail for a long time, right?
Yeah.
I feel like some of those, the laws need to be reconsidered.
Yeah, I think there are certainly, I would say there's efforts in some places to decriminalize or at least to refocus lower level offenses to ordinances and infractions. Like marijuana is a great example. Like it's one of those things that for many, many years, it's been sort of the boogie drug, meaning, it's out there, but like it's really hard to find a source to get it, to smoke it, to do whatever. And then there's like so many problematic black market things that go on behind the scenes. So it built this entire subsect of the population that ends up experiencing what's known as drug court. Now, I know there are a lot of other substances now that take people to drug court, but it used to be marijuana was the big one. And you could be in trouble for trafficking marijuana and very easily get a multiple decade sentence in federal prison for it.
Yeah, that was a big problem.
Yeah, it was a huge issue. It went on for years. It's not that it's gone away completely. It's just
They realized that it
Yeah.
didn't really apply for the mandatory minimum situation.
Yeah. I have a story on top of that one. It's not a super long story. It just popped up in the news again recently. It actually took place a couple of years ago, but we're starting to see some of the court part of it. Do you watch reality television at all?
Not really, no.
Okay. For a couple of years, one of my kids' friends watched this show, and I did not at the time. Like, I don't, and to this day, I know a little bit about the show from the perspective of research done on it, but I don't know anything about like the people on the show. But this is an interesting story. So I'm going to talk a little bit about reality TV and then a true crime story that's intermingled here. There was a show that ran from 2011 to 2014. So for 4 seasons, it has 91 episodes. It's called Lizard Lick Towing. This was an American reality show based out of North Carolina. It was a spin-off of a series called All Worked Up. And the way that it all came together is originally 2 of the stars of the show were going to be on a show called Wife Swap, which is another reality show. Lizard Lick Towing is a real entity. It's run by Ron and Amy Shirley out of an unincorporated area near Raleigh, North Carolina. It's called Wendell, but there's this little tiny space in the middle of Wendell that's known as Lizard Lick. It's one of those things that shows up on like list of really like unusual names for cities. According to the background and the website for All Worked Up, which is it shows up on TrueTV.com, and the Raleigh News and Observer, and the Wayback Machine had News and Observer articles, and I think there was a brief mention in Rolling Stone possibly in there. Ron Shirley starts Lizard Lick Towing back in 1998. He has 1 truck, and his wife Amy Shirley is his partner and the co-owner of his business. Over time, they grow this company to include 15 staff members, and they end up having around 20 trucks. Bobby Brantley is a character on the show, and he's also Ron Shirley's friend and longtime coworker, who had actually started out as a person who was dissatisfied with Ron Shirley having towed his truck. So he began working, according to the lore, for Lizard Lick Towing to pay off his debt. Now, even though Ron and Amy were originally going to be part of Wife Swap, according to a little local newsletter down there called the Eastern Wake News, the television gets started in August of 2008 when a cameraman is sent to do some test shoots for Ron and Amy Shirley. And the day is quite entertaining. And the network, True TV, was scouting out prospects for new shows. And they learned that like this family was kind of a weird mix of things. So Amy Shirley, the wife, she's a power lifter. She's also a mortician. And she was a co-owner of Lizard Lick Towing. And for those of you who don't know what a towing company is, typically people think of it in the context of like helping disabled vehicles. But a large part of what towing and recovery companies do is to repossess vehicles. That's vehicles that aren't being paid on by whoever's driving them around. So True TV realized that this was a really weird group of people, and they were very interesting, and they wanted to capture some of what was happening. According to a woman named Robin Hutt, they fell in love with these people. They thought the name of the Lizard Lick was interesting. And they wanted to start a television show that followed Ronnie and the people that were working there. And they did. They called it All Worked Up. So they developed this show, All Worked Up, and it doesn't do exactly what they're looking for. But they redeveloped the show, and instead of focusing on Ronnie and his coworkers, like the tow truck drivers, they focused solely on Ronnie and Amy. And this becomes what is now known as Lizard Lick Towing. It premieres on February 7th of 2011, and it's going to run for 4 seasons. It's canceled at the end of the 4th season that had premiered December 16th, 2013. And we kind of like leave off with Lizard Lick Towing being like one of those things that like you just don't think about that much anymore. I don't know that they've done anything since then in terms of creatively. But the way I get to this show, like I said, somebody in my life was watching it, and I actually can't remember who. I know it was on in the background, so I saw pieces of it, but I never saw the whole show. It was honestly a little bit off-putting. It was meant to be very dramatic. And for me, the only thing that I watch in terms of stuff like this is I used to watch Cops, and I used to watch the Live PD show. That was mainly with my kid. My kid really liked Cops and Live PD. Where we pick up, though, is in 2022. And I remember reading about this when it happened. It was quite bizarre. I went to the wiki for Lizard Lick Towing, and they do mention this. And here's what it says. It says, on February 17th, 2022, Ron Shirley, so the star of Lizard Lick Towing, his son, Alex Harley, was shot and killed outside a home in Garner, North Carolina. Authorities in Johnson County subsequently arrested 2 teenagers for the shooting of Alex Harley Shirley and his female companion, Sophie Hagee. Had you ever heard of this shooting before I dragged you into this week?
Just it when it hit in the news briefly when it happened.
Yeah. So because of the proximity to some of my family and whatnot, like there's people involved in this show, like from a crew perspective and some of the character perspective, that like actively posted on social media that I had friends in common with. So I saw some of this going on. I did not pay a ton of attention to it, but I pulled up the first thing that I remember being tagged on Facebook, and I had saved it a long time ago to a list. It's from Jax Miller writing for Yahoo.com Entertainment. And it's Friday, March 11th, 2022. And here's what it says. Deputies are searching for a 5th suspect nearly 1 month after the son of 2 reality TV stars was shot dead. Now, it's going to contradict some of the stuff that was in that wiki summary. That's why I'm going here and saying what I'm saying. It says that Harley Shirley, known as, quote, Alex, 21, was found shot to death at a Sheetz convenience store in Garner, North Carolina on February the 17th. So Oxygen has gotten a hold of this, and they have emailed out like a press release about this. Not sure what they're doing there, but I get it. People were interested in these people in the show. Johnston County authorities have since arrested 2 women and 2 teenage boys in connection with the shooting, which also left a 20-year-old woman paralyzed. This is according to a Facebook post from the Lizard Lick Towing folks. And this post basically pops up on February 26, 2022 from Lizard Lick Towing and Recovery. It says, so a person gets arrested on a felony charge, the 4th thus far, with a few more to go in this senseless murder / execution of our son and the shooting of his friend. And their Facebook and TikTok get mystically totally deleted several hours later. If a person is innocent until proven guilty as the law grants, what could you possibly have to hide unless you have a guilty conscience? We will not hate, and we will pray for the families of all involved on both sides of this senseless murder, but we will not stop pursuing justice on all fronts, either for our dead son or the paralyzed young lady that is suffering also. When you start to hide, there is always a reason, but trying to go ghost doesn't allow a person to go guiltless. If you are involved, they will find you. To many chirping birds now, and I believe truly vengeance is God's, not ours, but justice is ours. And even if we can't forgive you, God always will. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. You will have to answer for the lives you've taken and changed forever, either firsthand or by trying to cover up the crime. The evidence you have hidden and the heart that you have broken, our God will always be bigger than our problems. But our triumph will come when you all answer for this tragedy. You can't hide now. You can't run or disappear either. The only thing you can do is face your faults and pray to the only one that can forgive you forever. This is a long road, but we have hiking boots and are prepared for this trip. So, thousands of shares and comments on this, a lot of likes, a lot of people talking about Lizard Lake towing and recovery. They're still around. They're kind of a conservative group. They talk a lot about God and politics. I don't personally know like the key characters in this. I did feel like this was an interesting tragedy. And the differences made me wonder like what had happened here. So I scrolled through like the 2 different GoFundMes. One was for a scholarship in Alex Shirley's name, had a $30,000 goal, raised $5,000. And it's like kind of the typical stuff that you would expect to hear from parents about children who have been lost. It's very tragic to read, very sad. I don't know anything about Alex Shirley. What's interesting is there's this other page talking about Sophie Hagee. There's $88,000 raised against a $100,000 goal for her. And it says, Sophie is 20 years old. She's a beautiful, kind young woman who has an entire life ahead of her. Sophie is now paralyzed following a shooting that took place while she was attending a memorial service. So keep that in mind. As she innocently attended a balloon release to support the loss of another peer who had been killed tragically in a car accident, Sophie was shot twice in her back. One bullet remains lodged in her spine and severed her spinal cord. She is now paralyzed from her waist down. As expected, Sophie is in shock, overwhelmed by emotion, and is having a difficult time processing what has happened. Sophie and her family are eternally grateful for anything you can give to assist with medical costs. What's wild about this is people are still posting on this page, like in 2025. I don't see a lot of donations coming in or anything like that. They have, for some reason, reopened the donations.
She's got an ongoing condition.
Well, I understand that. I totally understand that. And there's a whole group out there that is dedicated to like assisting her.
Sure.
With like, and it is very interesting to me, like the people that have come together around her. I will say that like I have seen images of her in 2023. She appears to be walking. I don't know if that is 100% accurate. I think it's like one of those things that maybe they're doing some kind of experimental treatment, and that's one of the things that's costing so much.
I see.
So I hope that like something is happening there. And I kind of held off till now to talk about this because it's always complex when like stuff is ongoing legally. Like it's difficult to cover. I know people do it all the time. They cover live trials and they talk about it. But the truth is like things can change depending on the outcome. I do feel like this case is finally getting to a point where, it can be talked about. And it is so interesting to me how the media is presenting this. So I'm going to like kind of walk through a series of articles here that talk about this. And some of the information is going to be repeated, and I'm using both of the sources because I don't necessarily know which part is true, and I just find it fascinating. This is coming out of WREL, which is a news source in Raleigh, North Carolina, on July 11th at 6:02 p.m. It just says by WREL staff, and it says "Shattered Beyond Recognition." That's the title of it. It says on Friday, a judge sentenced Joshua Stewart to between 33 and 38 years in prison. This is at least 3 decades for his role in the February 2022 shootings that killed 2 people in Clayton, North Carolina. I'm saying that again, and I'm going to point this out because now we have Wendell as a potential place. We have Garner as a potential place where these kids were shot. And now we have Clayton, North Carolina.
I think that Garner was where the defendant was from.
Right, but that's where the Sheets is.
Okay.
It's like that all over the place. Like that's why I think nobody's claiming these articles and just says by staff. It says Stewart, 20 years old, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder. He was 17 during the February 17th, 2022 shootings of Alex Shirley and his friend Sophie Hagee. So he's 17 years old when he's doing this. Alex Shirley dies in these shootings. This is still with the article. He's the son of Ronnie Shirley Jr., who starred on the show Lizard Lake Towing. Sophie Hagee survived, but 2 gunshot wounds to the back left her paralyzed from the waist down. Family members of the 2 victims spoke at Friday's sentencing hearing. So the mother of Alex Shirley is not Amy Shirley. It is a woman named Christy Lee. Christy Lee says, "My word is decimated, shattered beyond recognition. 20 shots were fired. Alex, my precious son, suffered 12 wounds. He did not die in a hospital surrounded by love. He bled out alone in a Sheetz parking lot." Alexis Shirley, who is Alex Shirley's brother, also spoke out in court on Friday and said, "Alex wasn't just my brother. He was my heart, my best friend. Josh Stewart destroyed every sense of safety and joy that we once had. He turned my life into a before and after. Before you killed him, and after I had to figure out how to keep breathing without him." And Jeff Hagee, who is Sophie Hagee's father, he comes in to deliver a victim's impact statement in court as well. And he says, "I can't forgive you because I don't feel anything anymore but anger." According to the reporters, Josh Stewart was crying at this point. He was wiping tears away as Jeff Hagee confronted him. 4 other people have either faced or face currently charges related to the February 17, 2022 shootings. I'm bringing all of these guys into it because it's interesting to me how like the investigative timeline is kind of revealed. So they state here, February 17th, Alex Shirley was killed on Josephine Road after attending that memorial balloon release for his friend who had died in a car crash. Detectives discovered Alex Shirley's body in a car parked at Sheetz. And according to the court, he was sitting in the backseat of the car's driver's side when gang members approached the car and fired 20 shots, killing him and striking Hagee, who was sitting next to Alex. This is according to a statement from the clerk of courts. And now we're going to talk about some of the other people. So first of all, if you're a kid, and these people, if you look at their pictures, they're clearly children. Sophie and Alex Shirley. I was trying to see if I had their ages. So Sophie, she's 20 years old when the...
I think they both are.
Are they both 20? 19 and 20? They're young people, but they're in the back of a car. What would possess people to shoot 20 shots into the back of a vehicle?
To me, there's no reason to ever do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of a single good reason to do it. Because 20 shots is a lot.
Yeah. It's a whole lot.
We don't have any idea why this happened, right?
No, we don't. That's one of the reasons I'm bringing this up, because it's a really good example of like, these people are kind of famous, not like in a major way, but like, you know, people have recently been talking a lot about justice for the rich and famous is different. I don't know if there is any justice in this case. I cannot figure this case out.
Well, it sounds like, so there were 5 people total charged, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it almost, if I was going to be stereotypical, I would say that it sounds exactly like some stupid gang initiation thing.
Except some of the people charged are really weird.
Are really what?
It's weird, like who's charged. So that
Well-
kid that we were just talking about was 17 years old, right?
Right.
So just throwing that out there, that could kind of be timing for some kind of gang thing, yeah. Do you want me to talk about one of the other ones, or did you have more to that thought?
Well, no, go ahead.
So back in December, so December 4th of 2024, Brett Neese for the WRAL, like the local news, he wrote an article and said a Garner man was sentenced Wednesday to 40 years in prison for the February 17th shootings of Alex Shirley, 21, from Clayton. That's the first place I've seen his age, and his friend Sophie Hagee. Following a 2-week trial, Nathan Jackson, 18, was found guilty of first-degree murder, attempted murder, 2 counts of felony discharging a firearm into a vehicle inflicting serious injury, among other charges. The prison sentence for first-degree murder is life without parole, but since Jackson was 16 when he committed the crimes, 16 years old, he must serve 40 years in prison to be eligible. Alex Shirley was killed on Josephine Road after attending a balloon memorial release, sitting in the backseat of the car's driver's side on February 17th, when gang members approached the car, fired 20 shots, killing Alex and striking Sophia Hagee, who was sitting next to Alice. Hagee survived, but 2 gunshot wounds to the back left her paralyzed from the waist down. WRAL News on Wednesday spoke to the families of both victims who had been listening to the trial play out for weeks at the Johnson County Courthouse. After Wednesday's sentencing, Christy Lee, this is Alex Shirley's mom, said that it had been an emotional 3 years and she's starting to feel some relief. She said, I felt a lot of relief. It's not closure. You don't get closure when you have to bury your child and see the gruesome things that we saw. She said, Alex Shirley's missed every day. It has actually decimated my world. I still say goodnight to an empty bedroom. I text his cell phone. The dogs still go into his room looking for him every single day. Jean Hagee, Sophie's mom, was also relieved with the decision. She said, committing crimes in a split second is not worth it because people's lives are changed forever. Ronald Shirley Jr., Alex's father, starred on the show Lizard Lake Towing. He and his wife told WRAL News that they are doing what they can to move forward. He said, if I leave this courthouse and this trial with anything else, I want people to know that you have to learn to forgive no matter what. You have to learn to love no matter how hard. So at this point, they point out that 4 people are charged and they are still looking for a 5th person. Okay? 2024, 4 people charged, still looking for a 5th person. So now we had Joshua Stewart, 17. We have this kid who is 16 when it happens, Nathan Jackson. These are young people doing this. In the middle of nowhere, by the way. This is not a city. All of the places that I named, Garner, Wendell, Clayton, all the places that I named, Garner, Wendell, Clayton, they are like kind of far out from Raleigh, which I do consider to be a city, Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, we have that. Here's the other 2 charges. We have that. Here's the other 2 charges. Cassidy Laureen Hunter she was arrested and charged with accessory after the fact, and authorities are holding Cassidy Hunter at the Johnson County Jail on $1 million bond. That's right now, like today. She's being held on $1 million bond 3 years after this happened. So the other person is Diana Sarah Jackson. She was charged with obstructing justice related to the shooting investigation. Essentially, that means she either touched some evidence or she lied during the course of this investigation to defend someone. I am assuming that that is Nathan Jackson and that she is mom, aunt, sister to him. Authorities still holding her at the Johnson County Jail on a $100,000 secure bond. In June of 2025, they arrested Kevon Nicholson. He gets arrested in Philadelphia, and they charge him with the same charges as Nathan Jackson and Joshua Stewart. He is now in the process of I think he's just been extradited back to Wake County, North Carolina. The last update I read, I think, was June 29th. They were in the process of doing that. So he fled to some degree. It is so interesting to me how this is all still so slowly unraveling if it took place at a Sheetz. The reason I say that is because Sheetz has some of the best cameras. They're probably third on the list. I think the first best cameras are Walmart, the second best are Target.
It could have been a blind spot, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's been more about making accurate identifications, right? A lot of times you can have especially with, we're talking about 16, 17-year-olds. It's not like they're going to have a mug shots and stuff, right?
Correct. And there were, at the time this was all going down, I don't know if you remember this or not, North Carolina had some wonky rules about how you identify people. And like you, particularly those who are underage, like could only be identified once it had transferred to the upper courts. It couldn't be like when they're wanted.
Oh yeah, I vaguely remember the ins and outs of that. But so that could be part of what the delay was. I actually saw, now I've seen it, I don't know what happened here. I saw that there was shooting like in front of the house that they were out at for the memorial. So I didn't know it, but then I saw where somebody wrote that they were sitting at the Sheetz and somebody just shot 20 shots into it. I don't know what was going on. I don't know if it was targeted. I have a feeling it may not have been targeted, and that's why you have all these additional people getting charged. Because when you have a random crime like that, because if it was random, then it could have been absolutely anyone, right? And that's really scary. And so a lot of times law enforcement or the prosecutor's office will really jump on those cases to kind of just shake things up. And, if, like you said, if one of them was the mom who probably, misdirected police, or I don't know what she did, but she got charged, right? And then there was an accessory after the fact. And so only Kevon Nicholson, was he arrested for, what, do you know what he was charged with?
Let me pull him up really quick.
He was actually just arrested, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen the full list of charges. I saw something that indicated he was going to be charged with something that looks similar to Josh Stewart and the Jackson kid. I think I saw that Nathan Jackson, Kevon Nicholson, and Josh Stewart. I was trying to think like how you get there to the 20 bullets. So I'm imagining 3 guns, but I don't know that that's accurate.
Right. Something like that.
Or, even one gun with a switch in this day and age. I definitely have a handgun that has 22 rounds in it, so that could be a thing. I am assuming he's going to be charged similarly to how they were charged. But, the fact that he fled to Philadelphia probably isn't going to help him.
Right. And so I don't know. I don't know what happened with this. It seemed like there was some controversy around it.
That's been kind of swept under the rug, right?
Well, because, my thought was he was sitting in the back seat. I assume because the people who were in the front seat had gone in or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so that makes it less likely to be targeted, I think, unless he knew these people and they knew he was in the car with somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And it just seems like such a random occurrence. The other thing I thought was maybe some sort of like rage, like road rage, or, just something stupid that got blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
But we haven't ever heard anything about, well, not that I've been following this really closely or anything, but I've never heard anybody say, except I did hear like that all of the, at least the teenage defendants that were charged were part of a gang.
Right. And so this all comes up now. And last year, another case with a kid named Nicholas Nicholson in this area that I don't know if he is or is not related to any of these people. He was charged with a shooting death down there. It's another case where he really quickly racked up first-degree murder, discharging a weapon into a vehicle, felony conspiracy, discharging a firearm within city limits. And it's another woman who was found shot inside of her car. And I was wondering if it was like road rage killings.
I think it might be a gang initiation.
I even thought back to, and like this is the reason I brought all of this up today. And like what I'm hoping is that at some point I can follow up on all this with the appellate documents, because I'm guessing that Nathan Jackson's attorneys will appeal his, but it probably isn't time yet to see that. I'm hoping it'll be like one of those standard statements of facts so we can know more about this.
Sure.
But what I was going to say was, do you remember like crazy chain letters that we used to get? Like, not literally in the mail. They started out as like early emails, and they now are kind of urban legendy.
Yeah, that like if they flash your lights and you flash them, if you flash your lights at somebody and they, the gangs were exploiting that and like they turned around and killed somebody or something like that.
Right. And like, I'm not saying that's what happened here.
And let me be clear. I was trying to get it out, but like basically somebody would drive around without their lights on and they'd wait for the person to flash their lights which is, a common courtesy indication that, hey, buddy, your lights aren't on, turn them on, right?
Right.
And they would go after the person, right? And I don't know if that was urban legend or what, but I know I stopped flashing my lights at that point in time because I didn't want to deal with any sort of fallout like that, right? How dumb. And so I don't know if it really happened. I was really young then, but that's stupid. Right.
Right. Well, that's what I thought too. And this is sort of where I'm heading with this. So it's an urban legend. That's what it is. The only reason I am mentioning that part of it here is because back in 1992, there was a woman named Kelly Freed in Stockton, California, who ends up being murdered after allegedly flashing her headlights at another car that did not have its headlights on at night. And it was believed that the shooters from the other car took it as a sign of disrespect. So it's more like a road rage kind of thing than it is an initiation. But I was wondering if I thought that because of remembering that story. Like, is that why I jumped to gang initiations? Is that why the detectives are saying gang initiations? Or like, because if that's really going on, we're not being told now, or it's being lost. If it's like some kind of gang initiation where people under the age of 18 are driving around and if you flash your lights at them, they shoot up your car. We're not being told if that happens. And I'm not saying that's what's happening, but I was wondering if that's even how they get that this 16, 17, 18-year-old people are in a gang to begin with. And it's really just road rage for immature drivers.
Right. Or I can't imagine anything but stupidity leading to this happening. You've got, possibly 3 young men walking up to a car in a gas station parking lot. And whether they knew 2 people were in there or not, who knows? But they shot the car 20 times.
Right.
I mean, that could have been a baby back there. Like, it's senseless, right?
Yeah.
That's unsafe to begin. I mean, you don't ever want anybody shooting 20 bullets out in public for no good reason.
No, you do not.
And it obviously, I would imagine that it was a ruckus, right?
Right.
It wasn't like it was a hidden crime because people would have heard it. I mean, I don't know about this particular area, but Sheetz normally have tons of people there. Right, at any given time. And so people would have heard it and saw it and whatever else. And so to me, there is nothing but stupidity to it.
Yeah.
because it's not even a good crime, right?
No, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
And the fact that which I don't mean like good versus bad, but I mean like it's a dumb crime, and they're not even like criminally savvy about it. And, they immediately, well, not immediately, but eventually they get caught and sentenced. But there may have been a beef. There may have been a problem. It may have been a personal thing. And, that would make a little more sense. But they were older than those kids, right?
Yeah.
And that would be really weird. And I don't know which is worse in this situation, whether it's random or personal, but all of it's stupid. And I can't even imagine just sitting in the backseat of a car at a gas station waiting for my friends to come back out and get shot and killed.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought this was like, we talk about like big spooky stories all the time where we're talking about serial killers and we're talking about like these unsolved murders and mysteries and people who were sentenced to death row. And, it kind of dawned on me when I was looking at this that like so many lives have been changed by what you and I know to be an incident that involved 20 bullets in a gas station parking lot going into the back of a car in Sheets in a little town in North Carolina. So many people were changed by that happening.
Right. And none of it for the better, right?
Not at all.
Because what did those kids doing it? What did they get out of that? Jail for the rest of their lives?
I mean, for the most part, yeah. Like if you're 20 years old going into jail for 30 years, you're not getting out until your 50s. I mean, yeah, you're in jail for basically the best parts of your life.
Do you think it's possible? And again, I don't know because there's a generational shift happening. But do you think like they got their hands on some guns and like they wanted to just see what it would be like?
I don't know. I wonder that. Like I throw road rage in there. I wondered if they were like setting up some kind of drug thing. I wonder all sorts of things that like I don't have any evidence of.
Well, the issue I have with the road rage thing is like they didn't kill the driver.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right.
And so they were far enough, there was enough distance that this is my assumption because there's not a whole lot of details. And my assumption is car pulls into the Sheets, the driver and the passenger in the front get out and go in to do whatever. And he is sitting there and she is sitting there in the back seat.
Right.
And so there's enough distance for that to happen as far as any sort of confrontation that occurred. We also don't know if the kids were driving. All we know is that they walked up to the car.
Correct.
And so that's the other thing. Like, it's not a drive-by shooting. It was a walk-up shooting.
Yeah, and like if it weren't a Sheets parking lot, I would wonder like if it were like a Lover's Lane type shooting where they were in the back seat doing something like that. But that doesn't make sense.
Do you know what time it was?
I don't know.
That was another thing I wondered, like if it was like the middle of the night, but they just had a balloon release, apparently. So that would be it would be light outside, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah, I would assume it probably was light outside. Like I said, I'm hoping that, I can bring this one back up and like have the appellate documents in my hand and like get a little more into it. I don't have a lot more today with like what's sitting in front of me. I just thought it was so interesting how far-reaching something so senseless and like kind of seemingly small in a way, although it is 20 bullets, which is a lot. I just thought it was interesting how far-reaching it was.
Special consideration was given to True Crime Excess by LabrottieCreations.com. If you have a moment in your favorite app, please go on and give us a review or a 5-star rating. It helps us get noticed in the crowd. This is True Crime XS.
You fall like the stars. I break things like guitars. Thick skin, no scars. Wearing trouble, we took it too far. I don't want to go, but it's 'cause I'll disappoint ya. It's all I've ever dreamed of, something I cannot let go of. I hate the competition, this culture's like a gym, and I lost the motivation to get fit in your expectations.
True Crime Excess is brought to you by John and Meg. It's written, produced, edited, and posted by John and Meg. You can always support True Crime Excess through patreon.com, or if you have a story you'd like them to cover, you can reach them at truecrimeaccess.com. Thank you for joining us.